At family dinner, my mom looked me in the eye and said, "You'll never be as good as your sister," while I'd been secretly paying all their bills. I stood up and said something that made the room go dead silent. "Then ask her to pay your bills." The words came out with a calm finality that surprised even me. For a moment, nobody moved. Dad's fork was halfway to his mouth, frozen in midair. Emma's wineglass stopped at her lips. Mom's confident sneer faltered as the weight of what I'd just said began to sink in. I felt something shift inside me, like a switch being flipped. The hurt was still there, burning in my chest, but underneath it was something much more dangerous: clarity. For 28 years, I'd been the family disappointment, the one who never quite measured up to my golden sister, Emma. But as I stood there in that silent dining room, I realized I'd been carrying more than just emotional baggage. I'd been carrying them financially for years. The rage building in my chest wasn't the explosive kind that leads to screaming matches. It was the cold, calculating kind that leads to strategic decisions. As a senior financial analyst at Meridian Investment Group, I'd spent 5 years learning to spot patterns, inconsistencies, and leverage points in complex situations. I'd built a reputation for turning messy financial data into clear, actionable strategies for clients managing millions in assets. But somehow, I'd never applied that same analytical thinking to my own family situation until now. "What did you just say?" Mom asked, her voice tight with the kind of controlled anger I'd seen her use on service workers who disappointed her. "I said ask Emma to pay your bills," I repeated, my voice steady. "Since she's so much better than me, surely she can handle the financial responsibilities I've been carrying." Dad finally set down his fork, his face reddening. "Maya, what's gotten into you? We're family. Family helps each other." "You're absolutely right, Dad. Family does help each other." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, opening the banking app I'd been staring at obsessively for months, wondering how I'd been bleeding money so fast. "So let's talk about how much help I've been providing." See, what my family didn't understand was that being a financial analyst wasn't just my job. It was how my mind worked. I documented everything. Every transaction, every payment, every financial decision got logged, categorized, and analyzed. It was an occupational habit that had served my clients well, and as it turned out, it was about to serve me even better. My position at Meridian wasn't some entry-level number-crunching role. I was responsible for analyzing investment portfolios worth upward of $50 million, identifying risk factors that could cost clients their entire retirement savings. I developed a specialized expertise in forensic financial analysis, which meant I could trace money flows through complex structures to identify fraud, mismanagement, or hidden liabilities. More importantly, I'd built significant personal wealth through the investment strategies I'd learned. My annual salary was $92,000, but my real financial strength came from the portfolio I'd been building since college. Through careful stock picks, real estate investments, and retirement contributions, I'd accumulated over $180,000 in assets by age 28. While Emma had been bouncing between marketing internships and part-time jobs, posting Instagram photos of her entrepreneurial journey, I'd been steadily climbing the professional ladder. I'd earned my CFA certification, completed an MBA in finance, and established relationships with some of the most successful investment professionals in the city. My supervisor, Rebecca Winters, was a former Wall Street executive who'd taken me under her wing after I'd identified a potential fraud scheme that saved one of our largest clients from losing over $2 million. Rebecca had been teaching me not just about financial analysis, but about leverage, negotiation, and strategic thinking in high-stakes situations. "Maya, you have a gift for seeing what other people miss," she told me during my last performance review. "You don't just crunch numbers. You understand what they mean and how to use that understanding strategically." I'd also developed relationships with legal professionals through my work. When you're dealing with investment disputes and financial irregularities, you get to know the best attorneys in town. David Kellerman, the family law attorney who'd handled several messy divorces for Meridian clients, had become a reliable contact for complex financial matters. But the biggest advantage I had over Emma was something my parents had never bothered to understand: financial discipline. While Emma had racked up credit card debt and relied on family bailouts, I'd been building my credit score, saving aggressively, and documenting every financial decision I made. The truth was, I'd been financially supporting my parents for over 2 years without ever explicitly agreeing to it. It had started small. A few hundred here and there when Dad was between jobs, help with Emma's car repair, assistance with their mortgage when Mom's part-time bookkeeping work wasn't covering expenses. But like most financial problems, it had grown systematically until I was essentially subsidizing their entire lifestyle. "Maya, whatever point you're trying to make, this isn't the time or place," Emma said, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. "Actually, Emma, this is exactly the time and place," I replied, scrolling through my banking history. "Because we're talking about family contributions, and I think everyone should understand what those actually look like." I started reading from my phone. Monthly mortgage assistance to Mom and Dad, $2,800. Emma's student loan payment, $650 monthly. Emma's car payment, $412 monthly. Emma's credit card minimums when she can't cover them, averaging $300 monthly. The silence in the room was deafening. Emma's face had gone pale, and she was staring at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. "That doesn't include the $5,000 check I wrote when Emma needed help with her security deposit," I continued. "Or the $3,200 I contributed when Dad had his medical emergency. Or the $1,800 I spent on Emma's birthday party last year." "Maya, how do you have all those numbers memorized?" Dad asked, his voice smaller than before. "Because I'm a financial analyst, Dad. I track every dollar I spend. It's what I do professionally, and it's how I manage my personal finances." I looked around the table at their uncomfortable faces. "Over the past 2 years, I've contributed $47,000 to this family's financial stability." The number hung in the air like smoke. I watched my parents exchange glances, the kind of silent communication that happens when people realize they've been caught. "Now," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "let's talk about Emma's contributions to the family finances. Emma, would you like to share those numbers?" Emma was crying now, but not the graceful kind of tears that had always gotten her sympathy. These were the messy tears of someone who just realized how thoroughly they'd been exposed. "Maya, I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought Mom and Dad were helping me with some of those payments." "They were helping you," I said evenly. "With my money." That's when something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or parental favoritism. This was about financial abuse, systematic manipulation, and fraud. As someone who identified these patterns professionally, I should have seen it sooner. But now that I saw it clearly, I knew exactly how to respond. The next morning, I took a personal day and spent it making phone calls. My first call was to Rebecca Winters. "Rebecca, I need some advice about a complex family financial situation," I said when she answered. "It involves systematic financial manipulation over several years, and I want to make sure I handle it strategically." Rebecca listened as I explained the situation, and I could hear the shift in her voice from friendly mentor to serious strategist. "Maya, what you're describing sounds like financial elder abuse, except in reverse. They've been systematically exploiting your financial stability while undermining your self-worth." "That's what I was thinking," I said. "The question is, what's the best way to extract myself while protecting my financial interests?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Can you document everything? Bank transfers, payment records, any written communications about these financial arrangements?" "I already have 2 years of complete documentation," I told her. Every payment, every transfer, every conversation I can remember. Good. Here's what you need to do. First, get legal consultation immediately. Second, stop all financial support immediately. Third, prepare for them to escalate their manipulation when they realize you're serious. My second call was to David Kellerman. When I explained the situation, his response was immediate and clear. Maya, you need to protect yourself legally, he said. What you're describing could have tax implications, gift tax issues, and potential liability if they've been using your money for purposes you didn't authorize. David recommended I gather all documentation and meet with him that afternoon. He also suggested I contact a forensic accountant to do a complete analysis of where my money had actually gone. The goal isn't necessarily to take legal action, David explained. The goal is to establish clear boundaries and ensure they can't claim you had ongoing financial obligations to them. My third call was to Janet Foster, the forensic accountant who'd worked on several of my clients' cases. Janet specialized in tracing money flows in complex family financial situations, particularly in cases involving potential fraud or financial abuse. This is more common than you'd think, Janet told me when I described the situation. Adult children supporting parents is normal, but systematically deceiving someone about where their money is going while psychologically manipulating them is abuse. Janet agreed to do a complete analysis of my financial contributions over the past 2 years. She'd trace every payment, categorize every expense, and provide me with a comprehensive report that could be used for legal or tax purposes. By the end of the day, I had a team of professionals helping me understand and document the full scope of what had been happening. More importantly, I had a strategy. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Complete financial transparency, followed by immediate cessation of all support. I would present my family with a comprehensive accounting of every dollar I'd contributed, then inform them that all future financial support would end immediately. But the key was timing. I needed to present this information in a way that gave them no opportunity to manipulate me emotionally or create guilt-based arguments for continuing the financial support. Janet's forensic analysis took 3 days to complete, and the results were even more damaging than I'd expected. Over the past 2 years, I'd contributed $53,000 to my family's finances. But more revealing was where that money had actually gone. $17,000 had gone to Emma's student loans, car payments, and credit card debt. $22,000 had gone to my parents' mortgage and household expenses, but $14,000 had gone to what Janet classified as lifestyle expenses: vacations, restaurants, shopping trips, and entertainment that my family couldn't afford without my subsidies. The Hawaii vacation I'd been excluded from? I'd paid for it indirectly through my mortgage contributions. Emma's designer clothes and expensive dinners? Covered by the money I'd been sending to help with her emergency expenses. My parents' weekend getaways and wine collection? Funded by the daughter they constantly told wasn't as successful as her sister. But Janet had also discovered something that made my blood run cold. Emma's actual salary at her marketing job was $32,000 annually, not the $45,000 my parents had been bragging about. She'd been lying about her income while living off my financial support. Maya, what you've uncovered here is systematic financial exploitation, Janet told me during our final meeting. They've been using your money to maintain a lifestyle they can't afford while psychologically manipulating you to prevent you from questioning the arrangement. Janet's report was 37 pages long and documented every aspect of the financial abuse. It included bank records, payment histories, tax implications, and comparative analysis showing how much my family's lifestyle had improved since I'd started contributing to their finances. Armed with Janet's report and David's legal advice, I was ready for the confrontation I'd been planning since that dinner a week earlier. I called my mother and requested another family dinner. I want to discuss the financial situation we talked about last week, I told her. I think it's important that everyone understands the numbers clearly. Mom agreed to Saturday night dinner, probably thinking she could convince me to resume the mortgage payments that had stopped after our last conversation. She had no idea what was coming. Saturday arrived, and I showed up at my parents' house carrying a leather portfolio and a calm confidence I'd never felt in their presence before. The dining room was set up formally again, as if they were trying to recreate the atmosphere from the previous week's disaster. "Maya, we're so glad you wanted to talk this through," Mom said as I sat down. "We know there was some confusion last week about the family finances." "There wasn't any confusion, Mom," I replied, opening my portfolio and removing Janet's bound report. "There was systematic financial deception, and tonight we're going to address it completely." I placed the report on the table where everyone could see it. "This is a forensic financial analysis of every dollar I've contributed to this family over the past 2 years. It was prepared by a certified forensic accountant, and it documents exactly where my money went." Dad reached for the report, and I watched his face change as he flipped through the pages of bank records and payment documentation. "The total amount I've contributed to this family's finances over the past 24 months is $53,412, I announced. "That doesn't include gifts, meals, or other expenses I've covered. That's just direct financial support." Emma was staring at the numbers, her engagement ring catching the light as her hands trembled. "Maya, I had no idea it was that much money." "Of course you didn't, Emma," I replied. "Because you were told your lifestyle was being funded by your parents, not by your sister who supposedly can't measure up to your success." I turned to the section of Janet's report that detailed Emma's actual income and expenses. "Speaking of success, Emma, would you like to tell everyone your actual salary at the marketing company?" Emma's face flushed red. "Maya, please don't." $32,000 annually, I said, reading from the report. "Which is interesting, because for 2 years you've all been telling people Emma makes $45,000, while I make $92,000 annually." The silence that followed was complete. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the sound of cars passing outside, even the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. "But the most interesting finding," I continued, "is where my money actually went. $17,000 directly subsidized Emma's lifestyle. $22,000 covered family expenses that my parents couldn't afford, and $14,000 went to vacations, entertainment, and luxury purchases that none of you could pay for without my contributions." I looked directly at my mother, who was staring at the report like it was written in a foreign language. "Mom, do you remember the Hawaii vacation you didn't invite me to because you thought I was too busy with work?" I asked. "According to this analysis, I paid for that vacation through the mortgage contributions you told me were necessary to keep you from losing the house." The dam burst. Dad started talking rapidly, trying to explain how they hadn't meant to deceive me, how they'd been planning to pay me back, how they'd thought I understood the arrangement. Mom jumped in with justifications about family obligations and temporary assistance. Emma was crying and apologizing, claiming she'd never understood where the money was coming from. I let them talk until they ran out of words. Then I opened my portfolio again and removed a single sheet of paper. "This is a formal notice that all financial support from me to this family ends immediately," I announced. "Effective today, I will no longer contribute to mortgage payments, loan payments, car payments, credit card payments, or any other family expenses." I placed copies of the notice in front of each of them. "This document has been prepared by an attorney, and it establishes that any previous financial contributions were gifts, not loans, and that I have no ongoing financial obligations to any of you." "Maya, you can't just abandon your family," Mom said, her voice rising. "We depend on that income." "You depend on my income while telling me I'll never be as good as my sister," I replied. "You depend on my income while excluding me from family vacations and celebrating Emma's success that I'm actually funding." I stood up, gathering my papers. Emma, your student loans are your responsibility now. Your car payment is your responsibility. Your credit card debt is your responsibility. Mom and Dad, your mortgage is your responsibility. Maya, please, Emma said, reaching for my arm. I know I messed up, but we can work this out. We're family. Emma, you didn't mess up, I said, gently removing her hand. You've been living off my money while participating in systematic psychological abuse. The messing up was all mine, for allowing it to continue for 2 years. I headed for the door, then turned back for one final statement. I want you all to understand something. I make more money than Emma, and I have stronger financial security than any of you realized. The difference between us isn't talent or ambition. The difference is that I've been supporting all of you while building my own career, and you've been living off my work while convinced that I'm the failure. Maya, if you walk out that door, everything changes, Dad said, his voice carrying a threat I'd heard my entire life. Dad, everything already changed, I replied. The only question was whether I was going to keep pretending otherwise. The consequences of my financial withdrawal were immediate and devastating for my family. Within 2 weeks, my parents were scrambling to cover their mortgage payment. Emma's car was repossessed when she couldn't make the monthly payment on her $32,000 salary. The credit cards I'd been helping them pay off were suddenly maxed out again as they tried to maintain their lifestyle without my subsidies. But the secondary effects were even more revealing. Emma's boyfriend, Jake, broke up with her when he realized she couldn't afford the expensive dates and weekend trips that had characterized their relationship. My parents' social circle began to notice their sudden financial limitations when they stopped hosting the dinner parties and wine tastings they'd been funding with my mortgage contributions. Most satisfying was watching the truth emerge about Emma's successful marketing career. When she couldn't maintain her professional wardrobe and networking expenses without my financial support, her performance at work declined rapidly. The promotion she'd been expecting never materialized, and she found herself struggling to keep up with colleagues who were actually earning the salary she'd been claiming to make. My parents' house went into foreclosure proceedings within 4 months. Despite their desperate attempts to maintain their mortgage payments, they couldn't cover the $2,800 monthly without my contributions. The lifestyle they'd built was completely dependent on my financial support, and without it, their entire financial structure collapsed. Emma was forced to move back in with our parents, which created additional financial strain and family tension. The successful independent daughter they'd been celebrating was revealed to be financially dependent on the sister they'd been dismissing as unsuccessful. Meanwhile, my own life improved dramatically. With $53,000 no longer flowing to my family annually, I was able to accelerate my investment strategy, pay off my remaining student loans, and save for a down payment on my own house. Rebecca had been right about my strategic thinking. Once I'd identified the problem and implemented a solution, my financial position strengthened rapidly. 6 months after my financial confrontation, I received a text from Emma that perfectly summarized the situation. Maya, I finally understand what you were trying to tell us. I can't survive on my actual salary. I don't know how I thought I was successful when you were paying for everything. But the most validating moment came 8 months later when I ran into Mrs. Patterson, my parents' neighbor at the grocery store. Mrs. Patterson had always been one of Mom's friends who'd made subtle comments about my life choices compared to Emma's obvious success. Maya, I heard about your family's situation, she said awkwardly. I had no idea you were supporting everyone. Your parents always made it sound like Emma was the financially successful one. It's funny how money can create that impression, I replied. 3 years later, Emma works at a different marketing company making $38,000 annually and living in a small apartment she can actually afford. My parents sold their house and moved to a smaller place that fits their actual budget. They've never asked me for financial help again, and they've never again suggested that Emma is more successful than I am. I bought my own house, earned a promotion to senior portfolio manager, and built an investment portfolio worth over $400,000. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is force people to confront the reality of their own financial situation by removing yourself as their safety net. The lesson was profound. You can't build genuine family relationships on financial deception and psychological manipulation. When I stopped subsidizing their lifestyle and demanded honesty about our family dynamics, the truth emerged naturally. Emma wasn't more successful than me. She was living off my success while I was being convinced I was the failure.